Sound check. Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Nathan Thompson with the Wellness Way, Yorkville. It's good to see all of you. I hope you guys had a great weekend. So the topic for tonight is the best foods as quote unquote supplements. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this um, had to do with when we're trying to get our health back. The first thing that we think is we need some kind of supplement or something like that, and some of that might be true. There's no doubt about it. But I'm going to show you a little bit how I think a little bit differently when it comes to helping a person get well. So, what are the best foods as supplements? And so, make sure you watch this all the way to the end because I'm going to show you some things that I know, in fact, you're probably deficient in and what you need to start doing as well. And I'll go a little bit into maybe looking into my brain a little bit as far as how we start to think a little bit differently when it comes to nutrition and things like that. So, if you're watching right now, say hello. Let me know where you're watching from too. And if you're watching the replay, go ahead and put replay, on there so I know that you're catching it at a little bit later time. Wow, we have a lot of people watching right now. Welcome so much. I'm so honored that you would spend a little bit of time with me. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit from a little bit different perspective when you talk about the idea of supplementation and things like that. So the best food as quote unquote supplements. Okay. So if you are from the Chicagoland area and you want to work with our office directly, then here's what I want you to do. I want you to go ahead and go to our Linktree profile, and I want you to register for our next event, which is going to be tomorrow. That's February 25th. Wow, time flies. Tomorrow at 6 o'clock p.m. This is an in-person event, and I'm going to talk about the approach to inflammation, and you'll understand why really handling inflammation first and foremost is the most important thing. So if you someone who suffers with weight loss resistance, heck, even cancer, problems with your hormones, thyroid issues, chronic joint pain, arthritis, type 2 diabetes, any kind of autoimmune condition, or really when people say, I want to balance my hormones, you really have to understand inflammation first and foremost. So make sure you get registered for that because it will bridge the gap as far as where you need to start when it comes to reclaiming your health. So all you have to do, guys, is if you just go and you click on our link tree, you'll see that pop up at the top, the inflammation event, work with me in person. Guys, right now I'm not working remotely, only because we just don't have availability for it. And I'm also committed to seeing people who are in my area first and foremost. That is my commitment to my community. So make sure you get registered for that inflammation event in person. All you have to do is if you click on that link, it will take you to Eventbrite. It'll take you probably 30 seconds to register. And as I always say, if you are if you plan on coming or you register for it, just please make sure that you're a person of your word and you show up for that appointment. Only because it takes a lot of my staff to get ready for that event, and they put on an awesome event. They're absolutely awesome and fantastic. So here's how you're actually going to get registered for it. And the other thing too is if you go to our link tree too, you'll see a bunch of free resources with workouts, free downloads. The Wellness Way, no sugar guide. So there's a lot of free resources on there, and I think it's actually really great. That's just a gift from me to you. And in addition to that, coming up, we have Cindy from Illinois Thermography who will be at our office. That's Thursday, March 13th. Cindy's going to be doing a breast thermography. People ask this all the time. It's like, do you recommend breast thermography? And yes, I do. And here's why. Because if you look at prevention, you'll see a reel come out in regards to that, and it'll probably make people turn sideways. You just can't handle different definitions. But if you look at medicine, the idea of prevention is really this: hey, get your mammogram, get your colonoscopies. The idea of prevention is early detection of disease that's already there. And it's like, well, you have a disease, but you just happen to catch it early. And then at that point, I'm like, now you're just going to go into a disease management system that is just going to just run you ragged, run you sideways. And just remember, they're never going to do anything in order to change the physiology that brought it on. So the reason why I like thermography so much, especially when you're looking at breast tissue, is that you'll start to see changes in physiology even before you have the presence of any kind of quote unquote disease. And so that way you can start doing things and pay attention, because I'm going to talk about some foods here in a little bit. And you can start reversing the physiology that led you to a disease process. And here's the thing: anytime you got cancer, anytime you got thyroid illness or anything like that, you'll understand that they're not doing anything to reverse the physiology that brought it on. So that is not to say that I don't have a problem with people getting a colonoscopy or something like that, but you have to actually just know what it is. It's the early detection of disease that's already there. And I'm like, well, what if you could start to see changes in physiology in the breast tissue before it actually turns up as cancer? What if you could actually do testing like a Dutch test and look at the hormone metabolism that will leave you a lot more susceptible to having breast cancer and things like that? And that's why looking at changes of physiology long before you're ever diagnosed with something is going to be so important, because you will be in charge to be able to start changing the physiology that brings on a disease process. So if you guys want to be at our office and you want Cindy to work with you as far as a thermogram, then go ahead and pause this video and you can contact Cindy directly. We don't have anything to do with this. She just comes in, she does the thermography. 815-482-6224. That's going to be Thursday, March 13th. So it's going to be in a couple of weeks. So make sure you reach out to her. I don't know how much space we have available. Only she knows that. So reach out to her and see if there's anything available that you can come in, get breast thermography here in our office. Okay. The best foods as supplements. That's one of the things I want to talk about, because I see a lot of, lazy supplement takers out there, and I apologize, but the whole idea should be, when it comes to supplementation, is this, and people ask me, all the time. And I think the reason why people fall in love with supplements so much is because they're just conditioned going to their doctor and leaving with some kind of medication or something that they're going to put in their mouth. And so people just, sometimes they just demand that they're on some kind of supplement or something like that. But I want you to get the big idea behind supplements and things like this. And this is what I tell every single one of my patients: is a supplement is really there to buy you some time until you can correct the causes. Notice how I make that plural, because it's not just a cause. If you go to a naturopath or something like that, or something who's an integrative medicine, they talk about the cause. And I'm like, guys, there's never one cause. If you understand the body, there's many different causes that are going on, although they can be whittled down to physical, mental, and chemical stressors. But, when people talk about disease, they talk about the cause. I'm like, there's never one cause. There's causes. And a supplement is there to just buy you enough time until you start correcting one of the reasons why you're not doing well, or one of the reasons why you're getting sick. But I really think when it comes to supplements and things like that, is that there should be kind of a time where you don't necessarily need to be on those forever. And in fact, I have this conversation with every single one of my patients, especially when they're committed to getting their health back. Number one, I want them to get better, most importantly. But number two, if I can save money, I want them to save. I want them to save some money, especially. But a supplement is there just to buy you time until you actually start fixing the reason why you can be sick. Especially. So one of the things that I will say is this: is that you'll never feel well with inflammation. You will never feel 100% if you are staying chronically inflamed. Let me give you a good example. If you ever had COV, et cetera, or if you ever had the flu, or if you had some kind of acute infection or illness, you'll understand that, like, oh man, I feel tired, I feel worn down and whatnot. And that's one of the reasons why when you're carrying a high inflammatory load, you're just not going to feel very good. The main thing is gosh, where is this inflammation actually coming from? Well, it can be coming from infection. So you may have an acute infectious illness going on, whether that's around the lungs or whether it's the gastrointestinal system. And you can have certain overgrowths of microbials that can become an infection within the gastrointestinal system. There's no doubt about it. Mold is also a huge inflammatory trigger. In fact, you'll see yourself get inflamed very systemically, especially. Blood sugar is absolutely huge too, because if you're carrying around high blood sugars will damage the protein structures in the body. And that's why it can cause damage to the joints. It can cause damage to the joint capsules. It can cause damage to the vascular system as well. You might be carrying around a lot of spinal inflammation. And if you don't line up with gravity, holy cow, the body's going to try to adapt to that. But you're just not going to feel good if you're not lining up with gravity the way that you are supposed to. And then, yes, you can have a deficiency of something that can lead to inflammation. And I love when people talk about, like, a lot who are in quote unquote functional medicine. And I do not consider myself in functional medicine at all. But a lot of times in functional medicine, they talk about deficiencies leading to inflammation. And I'm like, that's just not the only thing that's going on. Can you have a deficiency of something that can lead to a high inflammatory response? Yes, you can, whether it's low vitamin D or zinc or something like that. But you have to start looking three-dimensionally. You can't start looking like everything is a this for that type of approach. And this is why so many people just don't get better, because the body is a lot more complex than that. I get this question quite a bit. Dr. Nate, what are some of the most recommended supplements? And here's the thing. I'm going to tell you right now, and just because they're the most recommended supplements, I'm not saying that this is something that you need to be on as well, but these are probably some of the most common things that I recommend initially for some people. So what are they? Betaine hydrochloride, which is going to increase stomach acid or the acidity of the stomach to help you sterilize your food, help you to break down your proteins better. One of the biggest things that cause that to go down is chronically being in the fight or flight, not in rest and digest. Megabiotic or Psi complex, yes, they are probiotics, and there's a very specific reason why someone should be on a megabiotic versus a Psi complex. A lot of it has to do with past history of antibiotic use and things like that. So sometimes I'll have people on it, but I'm going to show you how you transition that person away from that. Albizia is probably the number one medicinal herb that we recommend. There's really no replacement as far as a food or anything like that. But the thing with Albizia is that Albizia is a mast cell stabilizer, and that's why it can take down a lot of allergy type responses. Yes, with seasonal allergies, but also with allergy responses in response to foods and things like that. So vitamin D3, yep, and also K2. This is very important because many people, and I'm going to talk about why there's certain people and what your heritage is, why you can be so desperately low in vitamin D. But a lot of people are pretty deficient in vitamin D, and I measure mine at least once or twice every single year. I don't think I've ever been under 80 as far as my vitamin D levels are concerned. And yes, I do supplement every single day with vitamin D, and I also don't swear off the sun. I love how people swear off the sun as if it causes skin cancer. And then, what happens is if someone gets skin cancer where the sun doesn't ever shine, kind of makes you wonder, huh? Liver glandular, and I'll go over why liver can be so important. And then California poppy, which is basically considered a sedative, and it helps people to get out of chronic fight or flight and to get into rest and digest. California poppy is basically like having a glass of wine without impairing your motor skills or having a bunch of yeast that can cause an allergy response. So it just calms you down quite a bit, okay? So these are some of the most recommended supplements, and please don't go to our store and start and just think that I'm recommending those things for you. Everybody's different. There might be, but generally speaking, these are some of the most common things that I recommend. And yes, you can get some of these from food, but some of these you can't get from food. You can't get Albizia from food, nor can you get California poppy. However, once you start correcting some certain things and you understand what could be triggering certain responses, then there's not a need to perpetually be on some of those herbs for the rest of your life as well. So the best foods as supplements. Here's what I'm going to go over, okay? All right, so here's the first one. Apple cider vinegar. Apple cider vinegar. So, at some point when a person goes through kind of a healing process, there's going to be less need for an increase in stomach acid for most people. And so then if they start having better digestion, they'll say, hey, here's what you can get from food. And I absolutely love apple cider vinegar. The reason why is, most people do need a little bit more acidity in their stomach because I don't see too many people who are actively seeing the food, smelling the food, and chewing their food enough. So many people they go, they eat on the run and they're eating in a high stress state. And that's why adding a little bit more acid to the stomach is something that can actually help you. So the purpose of having some betaine hydrochloride, or even apple cider vinegar, which is considered a weaker acid, one of the things that it can just help with is it can help you break down your foods a little bit better as far as breaking down your proteins, and it also can help a little bit with sterilization of food. If people are constantly low stomach acid, they're not going to sterilize their food, and that's why when you look at people and they're on proton pump inhibitors or acid reflux medication, this is why almost 100% of the time they're carrying some kind of infection within the gastrointestinal system just because they don't sterilize their food the way that they're supposed to. So apple cider vinegar, I'll recommend, get a tablespoon of it, prior to eating or right when you start, initiate the process of eating. But it doesn't replace seeing the food, smelling the food, and chewing the food just because it stimulates gastric acid production just by doing that. But apple cider vinegar is absolutely awesome and amazing. The only thing that I tell people is, hey, if you're taking any kind of apple cider vinegar, just make sure you just go down the hatch with it. Don't swish it around your teeth because it's a very high acid food, or drink or whatever you want to call it. And it can wear away a little bit at your teeth enamel. That's why when they talk about pop, because pop is a very high acid, type of drink. And if you let that just marinate around on your teeth, it can break down the tooth enamel, can lead to cavities and things like that. The same thing with apple cider vinegar, is very acidic, and you don't want it marinating around your teeth all the time. And that's why I say just take it down the hatch, especially. And yes, sometimes people they can't tolerate apple cider vinegar, especially initially, just because it is very acidic. But as those certain areas start to heal, they can tolerate apple cider vinegar a whole heck of a lot better. Okay. So, betaine hydrochloric acid, getting into, long-term apple cider vinegar. The second thing that I would say is sauerkraut. So I'll try to get people, transitioned over to eating some fermented food pretty quickly. Reason why I like sauerkraut so much, and actually, if you watch Dr. Patrick, he's absolutely just enamored with sauerkraut, and for good reason. And the reason why is we don't eat any kind of fermented food really anymore. And so sauerkraut is actually a great source of fermented food. It's also a non-dairy source of fermented food because it's coming from cabbage. But the reason why sauerkraut can be so good is because, number one, coming from cabbage, there's going to be a high amounts of fiber, which is always going to be good. Number two, there's going to be a high amount of good beneficial bacteria like lactobacillus within the sauerkraut. Number three, it's also going to be a good source of vitamin C, a good source of fiber, and also a good source of vitamin K2, which a lot of people can be deficient in too. So this is actually probably I would say the best one right now, Bubby's sauerkraut. And this is a food you can probably order this from Amazon. You probably can get it from a grocery store, if they carry it. But I would actually tell people, and I'll tell people, once they start, calming down, things start to get a little bit better, is I'll say, hey, what I want you to do is I just want you to get a heaping tablespoon of sauerkraut just a couple of times a day, just to get some good fiber, get some good vitamin C, K2, and just to get some beneficial bacteria into the colon, into the system. A lot of times people don't like sauerkraut. And I'll tell you at the end, one of the things that you should do. The third food is, we'll put people on a liver glandular, which is basically, a grass-fed liver, and it's dried up, it's cut up, and it's put in a powder form, and you take some capsules from it. And the reason why I like liver so much, but I always tell people, hey, rather than eating liver, one of the things that you can do is you can start eating liver. And the reason why liver is so good is that it's an organ meat, and it's very high in things like vitamin A. It's basically nature's multivitamin. When people ask me, hey, do I need to be on multivitamin? I'm like, why don't you just eat some liver? The reason why is because liver is very high in things like vitamin A, very high in B vitamins. It's high in things like CoQ10. It's high in selenium. It's high in zinc. I mean, it's nature's multivitamin. And so if you don't want to take a liver glandular in a pill form, then start eating liver, start eating, an ounce or so every single day. And I will say this, liver is probably one of the best sources of retinol, which is the active source of vitamin A. If anybody has any kind of skin issues, eczema, acne, or things like that, I'll recommend liver right away just because vitamin A is really good for the skin. So start eating some liver, and it's not that expensive. Now, I will tell you this: the idea of me eating liver completely grosses me out, so I'll never eat liver, and I'll take a liver glandular till the cows come home, because I never grew up with it, and it's the same thing with seafood. I hate seafood only because I had an aquarium when I was younger. And the fish actually became my friend. So, but liver is something good if you're willing to eat it. It's very, very nutritious for you. I know a lot of people say this, well, isn't liver toxic? No, it's not. In fact, I'll always ask people this question: where's your body store toxins? And they say the liver. I'm like, no, it doesn't. The toxins are stored within fatty tissue. It can be neurological tissue, fat, bone marrow, things like that, but it's not stored in the liver. The liver is designed to metabolize toxins, but they're not stored within the liver, especially if you're not dealing with a grain-fed cow that's basically slaughtered and already has a fatty liver. So liver can be very, very good for you. And again, it's nature's multivitamin. The next one that you can start eating too are going to be berries. You can start eating berries. The reason why is berries are really high in antioxidants, and also berries are really, really high in lots of fiber. Contrary to, all the carnivores out there, you don't need fiber. You do need fiber. You do need fiber. And in fact, even if you're a type 2 diabetic and you're trying to slow down your sugar intake, things like that, you can still enjoy berries. The reason why they're so high in fiber, they just slow the absorption of sugar so much. And that's why I tell people is hey, have a couple of handfuls of berries every single day, mainly because of the good fiber, the good antioxidants that are going to be in there. And yes, there is a little bit of glucose in there, but because of the fiber, it slows down the absorption of those glucose. So berries are actually really, really good. And yes, my little 2-year-old Elias loves berries. In fact, he had a strawberry today and he just absolutely loved it. So if Elias is watching right now, hey, Elias, bud, I love you. I'll see you in just a couple of minutes. So berries are good. Now, what about vitamin D? Okay. Vitamin D is very tough to get from food, but you can eat foods that are higher in vitamin D. Now, the best source of vitamin D is always going to come from the sun. And I love how, healthcare today has demonized the sun. And if you want to be smart when it comes to the sun, I say you need the sun. Don't burn yourself repeatedly because that's just going to cause so much damage. But you need to get out into the sun. I find it so odd that everybody demonizes the sun, yet they have no problem slathering a bunch of toxins on their skin to avoid any kind of sun exposure. So you need the sun in order to stimulate vitamin D production underneath the skin. But can you get it from food? I will say this, it's very hard to get adequate vitamin D if, it's in the winter months and you're not, do you have any kind of sun exposure. It's probably one of the most important things that you probably need to supplement with. But one of the foods that are highest in vitamin D are going to be cod livers. And I know what you're thinking. Oh, Lord, I don't want to eat any kind of cod liver. Neither do I. But cod liver is also very high in vitamin D. It's also very high in omega-3 fatty acids, essential fatty acids, which your body can't produce that you need. So cod livers are actually very, very good for you. And I know that someone's going to ask, what if I have a cod allergy? And I will say this, cod livers are not cod muscle meat. There's a difference between the two. If you have a beef allergy where sometimes that will pop up, liver is different than muscle meat. And the same thing goes for cod. Cod livers are different than cod muscle meat. And so even if you do have an allergy to cod, you still can have cod livers because it's a different protein. But I just love the whole aspect of not going out into the sun, because it quote unquote causes skin cancer. And then you see someone get skin cancer where the sun has never shone. You ever wonder that? So you do need to stimulate vitamin D. But when you're in the Chicagoland area, we haven't been able to stimulate any vitamin D stimulation by the sun or tanning or anything like that for a good 4 to 5 months. I will tell you this, and this is something that I guarantee your doctor has never told you this, but the darker your skin tone, the more sunlight exposure you need to stimulate vitamin D exposure. So this is particularly important for people whose skin has adapted to live more around the equator. So this would be like African American individuals, or people from Mexico, or from people who are more towards equatorial regions. Your skin's going to be darker, and really the skin has adapted to have vitamin D exposure year round. So the problem is then if you emigrate up to Chicago and now you only have vitamin D exposure for just a couple of months out of the year, your vitamin D levels can be very, very low. And I remember I had an individual who came in, an African American individual who came in. His vitamin D levels were at 8. They were at 8. And meanwhile, they should be at least in the 60s to 70s, but they were at 8. And he wasn't getting any vitamin D exposure. And there's some other reasons why he had such low vitamin D. But this person just felt so exhausted, fatigued, no energy. The reason why vitamin D is so important is because it influences over 1,500 genes inside the body. But the other thing too is it's so intimately attached to your adaptive immune system, and that's why having higher vitamin D levels is so important to the adaptive immune system. This is why this can be so important when it comes to autoimmunity, your ability to be able to handle a virus. Very important when it comes to that. So if you are have darker skin, you're of Hispanic descent, African American descent, and you live up here in the Chicagoland areas, you almost need to be supplementing with vitamin D, all the time, because you haven't had any vitamin D exposure, for the last 4 to 5 months. And this can be a big challenge the farther away you live from the equator, especially if you live up in the Chicagoland area. Okay. So the last food tip is DIM. Okay. Diindolylmethane. It's kind of difficult to pronounce, but basically when you talk about DIM, what you're talking about cruciferous veggies. This is very, very important. Yes, there's a supplement known as DIM. However, I will say this is DIM is very important for proper estrogen metabolism. And I say estrogen is a family of hormones, very important for estrogen metabolism. So things like broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale, cauliflower. Basically, I'll tell women this is if it smells like a fart, then it's going to be good for you. Okay. So the reason why DIM can be so important is it just helps to metabolize your estrogens into its more protective form. And this is why if someone is having, issues with some estrogen dominance, or they're having some issues, with some very or metabolizing hormones into weaker forms. And the only way to be able to know this is to really look at a Dutch test, DUTCH, a Dutch test, dried urine total and comprehensive hormone test, because it's not looking at production as much as it's looking at how you're being able to metabolize them. And this is all done pretty much into the liver. And so this is why if you start adding, cruciferous vegetables in high amounts, this just helps with your body's ability to be able to metabolize your estrogens. But I see so many people, or so many women especially, they just aren't metabolizing their estrogens into protective forms, and it can go down some very damaging pathways. So not all estrogen can be good for you. It just depends on how you're metabolizing them. But getting a lot of high sulfur cruciferous type veggies can actually be very, very good for you. So this is something that's really, really good, especially when you talk about women, their menstrual cycle, and how they're able to metabolize those hormones for excretion. That's why also gastrointestinal health is very important for to be able to metabolize and excrete those hormones without them getting reabsorbed and recirculated. Now, you may say this, but Dr. Nate, I don't want to eat or drink apple cider vinegar. I don't want to eat beef liver. I don't want to eat berries. I don't want to eat sauerkraut. I don't want to eat cod livers. And I don't want to eat cruciferous veggies because they make me bloat a little bit. I would just say, just steam them. Make sure that you steam them a little bit. And that'll probably help you a little bit with your ability to be able to break down some of those veggies and things like that. But I'll always ask people, hey, are you willing to get some apple cider vinegar? And at some point they'll say either yes or they'll say no. But if they say no, I'm not willing to get it, I'll say, all right, awesome. Then take a supplement. And notice how I spelled supplement with a $, because if you have to take a supplement, then I'm the one who's going to benefit from it. not a whole lot, but I'm going to benefit from it. You can buy it from our office, and yep, we'll make a little bit of money from you. And that's why when someone says, "Oh, I really messed up," or "I refuse to do this when it comes to my lifestyle," I have no problem looking at them and say, "You know what that means for me? That just means job security." But I'm always trying to help you to be able to handle and manage your life, because I will tell you the most important things first and foremost is clinical results. Um, and if you just refuse to change your lifestyle, if you refuse to do things or get things from nutrition, then yes, we always have a supplement for you. And you don't get to complain about you needing to take supplements, because I told you what you need to do when it comes to your lifestyle. Now, here's probably one thing that almost everybody needs to supplement. And I don't know how to change that, because it has to do with potassium. Guys, I took about 2,000 milligrams already of just potassium today. And you know why? Because I just don't get it in my diet. I just don't. If you look at the RDA of potassium, it's 4,700 milligrams per day. And when I look at people, almost zero people get enough dietary potassium in their diet. And in fact, you can get dietary potassium, and you can get it from organ meat will have a little bit, but vegetables will have a little bit more. Broccoli will have a little bit more. The highest amount of potassium is going to be in Swiss chard, and it doesn't taste very good. You need 4,700 milligrams of potassium a day, and almost no one gets enough potassium. And this is why if you don't get enough potassium, here's some of the symptoms of you becoming potassium deficient: fatigue, muscle weakness, muscle cramps, heart palpitations. Isn't that interesting? Because very rarely does anyone actually look at, maybe you have a mineral deficiency of potassium, of magnesium. No, they'll just go ahead and do, some kind of surgery on you in regards to that. Being deficient in potassium can absolutely cause high blood pressure, and it can also make you retain water, which you would call edema. So if you're like picking at your skin and it doesn't rebound, that generally would be called edema. And what a lot of people don't realize too is if you're deficient in potassium, it's going to cause a low insulin release from the pancreas, which, yes, this is why this will have something to do with even type 2 diabetes. If you're not releasing enough insulin, there can be a lot of other different reasons why. But potassium, your potassium levels are also, or your insulin release is also dependent on potassium, especially. So this is why potassium is so important. And I think it's one of the most neglected minerals out there. And one of the reasons why is you can't measure, there's no diagnostic test that's going to be good for measuring potassium. No, you can't measure it in the blood, because 98% of potassium is intracellular or within the cells, and it's not floating around in the blood. So I've had people, they come back and I know they're potassium deficient, and in the blood, their potassium is high. And they're like, "Well, why is my potassium high?" And I'm like, "Well, they probably, when they did the blood draw, damaged some red blood cells. There's a lot of potassium within red blood cells. And then it just got drawn into the syringe. And this is why it's considered high." So, but most of your potassium is within within like your cells, specifically like your nerve system, especially. And this is why making sure that you're getting just the RDA of potassium, 4,700 milligrams. And I love it when an MD will look at someone and be like, "You got to be careful with how much potassium you're consuming because of your kidney levels." And that doesn't change the RDA, and so then they're like, "Don't take potassium." And it's like, okay, so are you also going to tell them to not eat vegetables because of that? So potassium is one of those things where you have to guess. You can't really test for it, but it doesn't change the fact of what you need as far as to sustain physiology inside of the body. Is you need the RDA, again, remember, is 4,700 milligrams, and it's very hard for people to get that dietarily unless they're doing a really good job paying very close attention to their nutrition, and getting 10 cups of veggies every single day, which I don't see that many people doing. Okay. Let me also say this. There are some things that you'll need to always supplement for. And let me give you an example, because I'll give this joke, to someone, and that is if you've had your gallbladder removed. If you've had your gallbladder removed, it's not growing back. They're not going to put you in a med bed and you're going to grow back a gallbladder. And the joke that I'll tell people is they're like, "When do I go off of gallbladder complex?" And I'm like, "Did you grow a gallbladder back? You had it removed. Did you grow it back?" So there are just some things, if you've had an organ removed, if you've had your thyroid removed, you're going to need to be on a thyroid replacement hormone. I don't care how you cut the cake. You can't supplement with it. You're going to need to be on a hormone replacement. And it's the same thing if you've had your gallbladder out, then you're going to need to be on some kind of gallbladder complex, which is basically ox bile, because you've lost the storage tank to be able to store and be able to release exactly the right amount of bile when you are having meals. So you will need to be on gallbladder complex for the rest of your life, until they can figure out how to grow back organs, which they haven't done that, and nor do I ever think that they'll be able to do that too. Okay. So if I went through any of these and you're like, gosh, I know that I'm deficient, then, and you're a follower of here, and I will say this, don't become a lazy supplement taker, but if you're doing your best, I understand, that sometimes people do need a little bit of help. And so all you need to do is, if you go to our link tree, it's on the top of all of our socials, and then you can go and you'll see this pop up and it says the Wellness Way store. Basically, all you need to do is create an account and then get the things that you need, and then use the code 5058 at checkout. That will authorize you by me to say, yes, Dr. Thompson said it was okay to do that. Because I know that if you are ordering that, then you're going to do it. You're going to do it smartly with the right intention. So just use 5058 at checkout to authorize those. They'll be shipped directly to your door within a couple of days. Okay. All right. So final thought. This is so important. Here's the final thought. You should focus on learning how to think, not necessarily what to think. This is so true with me going to college and going, through postgraduate school, chiropractic school, is that they told you a lot on what to think, but they really didn't teach you how to think. And this is so true with society. You can go through school, you can go through any doctorate program. They don't teach you how to think, they teach you what to think. And this is why I think there's a lot of educated idiots that are out there. People with a lot of book smart, but they couldn't actually, if you put them in a paper bag, they would need an instruction manual how to get themselves, crawl out of a paper bag. And this is why I always will say, guys, you need to start thinking differently. And once I started thinking differently and started focusing on how to think and take physiology and saying, this is going to make sense, it wasn't necessarily on what to think. And this is why I always say this is, don't take my word for it. Just start making sense of it. And you'll see everything that I tell you is going to make sense. So you should focus on learning how to think, especially you youngsters that are in school. And don't be afraid to ask questions and to disagree with your teachers, because a lot of times what they're doing is they're just telling you what to think and not necessarily how to think. So start thinking a little bit differently. And this is why when it comes to a lot of education, I disagree with a lot of things in education so much, because they just teach you to regurgitate a bunch of information and not how to actually be a person who can think on their own. So guys, if this made sense to you and you still may need a little bit of help, reach out to us and get registered for our inflammation event. This is Tuesday, February 25th, 6:00 p.m. If you're from the Chicagoland area, this is an in-person event. So the approach to inflammation, make sure that you get registered for it. Our next one is going to be tomorrow night. Get registered for it. I'd rather you get registered sooner than later. There's so many people, they put it off. And then they wait until they're on the 11th hour of just being so sick, when they could have gotten help a lot sooner and enjoyed better health. That's what I want you to do. I want you guys to enjoy good health right now, because this life is so short. Why spend it being sick when you could start doing the things in order to start creating better health, and you can start doing it right now? So make sure that you get registered for that inflammation event. That's tomorrow, February 25th, 6:00 p.m. We start right on time. And usually the inflammation event runs about an hour and 15 minutes. Okay. All you have to do is, if you click on Linktree, you'll see the very first thing to pop up. Click on that, take you 60 seconds to register for it. So again, I went over the best foods as supplements and how we transition people over to foods. And remember, the idea of a supplement is to buy you time until you correct the causes. The cause is not just one cause, and it's not just a deficiency, but it's the best foods. But remember, lifestyle is what gets you out of it, and lifestyle is what keeps you out of it. And this is why I want you to start incorporating those foods right now. And in fact, there's so many people that need my help, and that I just don't have the time to be able to see everyone. And that's why I want you to start incorporating those foods right now. These are things that you can get from the grocery store. Start getting them right now. And yes, there are certain things, yes, like vitamin D and potassium that are very hard to get within your diet, but you can certainly try. But these are the best things that I want you to start doing that are going to have the highest nutritional value, that are going to start to feed physiology within the body. So make sure, guys, that you start doing that right now. If you learned anything from that, let me know. And if you're watching the replay, let me know you're watching the replay. And if you like this information, please make sure that you share this with other people. That's the only thing that I ask you. Please make sure you share this with other people, because there's a lot of people that are sick. There's a lot of people that are suffering. And could you imagine you share this with you and they come back and they say, thank you so much for taking part in caring about me and taking part in changing my life for the better. So the best food for supplements, the only thing that I tell you is get on this and start doing this right away. Head to the grocery store, start getting some liver, start getting some high potassium foods, start getting a lot of berries, start getting some sauerkraut, and just start doing it, guys. Because the more that you do that, the less you're going to need my help down the road, and the less you're going to need to supplement. So guys, I appreciate you watching this video. I hope you have an awesome, awesome rest of your week. I'll be going live next Monday with a brand new topic. So if you have any suggestions, just let me know. I'll take all of it into consideration. And make sure that you watch our content too, because I'll always go out, leave you things that are not only help you when it comes to your health, but also some things that are there to think differently about a lot of other things as well. So guys, be well, be blessed. Remember who you are. I hope you have a great rest of your night, great rest of your week. Make sure you share this video. I love all of you. I appreciate all of you. Be well. As I always say, remember who you are.